Okay, so I don't know if I'm actually live at the moment. Hopefully I am. If you could let me know in the chat section if you can see me and you can hear me okay, that would be fantastic. So good evening, Carl. I can see you're here. If you could just let me know if you can hear me and you can see me all well. Hopefully you can. And hopefully everyone is doing well. Excellent. Thank you very much, Pascal. Great to hear. And cheers, Carl. So, first of all, most importantly, you'll see that I'm not actually on Brewdog to start off with tonight. We're on something a little different. So we're on some California IPA. So, let's just see what this one's like. Anyway. Great to see you here tonight, as always. Hopefully a few of you had the opportunity to join myself and Dave yesterday. If you did, let me know in the chat, just to let me know that you were here last night, and hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you did, let me know that you enjoyed it, because I kind of really found it a totally different thing to do to what I'm used to dealing with. So it was great to have a little bit of a different experience in the live. If you did enjoy it, like I say, let me know in the chat, because it's something that I'm looking at doing again in the future, because it was a lot of fun. Hopefully I get to do it again with Dave and also some other guests that I'd love to bring on. So let me know if you think this is something you'd like to see more of in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, as always, drop that into the comments section, because I do check these things out. Okay, before I do my usual good evenings, I just want to say quickly that my setup is expanding, and there's been a couple of technical issues this evening before I came on. Literally 1.5 minutes before I went live, my screen just decided to stop playing. So if I have any technical issues, bear with me. I will do my very best to get us back online as quick as possible and continue with the live stream. But we do have a few nice new additions to the setup. So little things like now where I talk about joining the Facebook group, I can simply hit a button and you should now be able to see there's the link for the Facebook group. So hopefully these little things will make life a little easier. And, you know, if you like something or someone does a super chat, then we can do a little... So hopefully you can hear the little round of applause. Anyway, that's just me just playing around with some of the new things. Okay, so let's just take a little look to see who's in tonight, because it's always good to see the same faces as well as some nice new faces. So thank you very much, Carl, for joining in again tonight. I'm sure you will be an absolute legend in the chat. Anybody that knows Carl will know that he's very, very helpful, helping out with links, helping out with information, feedback, and so on. So please, everybody say a good evening to Carl and say thank you very much for helping out. As always, he's an absolute star. And hopefully he's got a nice beer on the go as well. Okay, so who do we have in this evening? I can see the numbers are going up quite nicely. That's awesome. Michael, yes, you are in tonight, and I believe this is the reason why we're doing tonight's live stream is because of you, sir. So if it all goes wrong, I can blame you. If it all goes amazingly well, then you can pat yourself on the back for knowing that you did an amazing job kicking me up the bum to actually get out and do this tonight. Okay, so Steve Pro, always good to see you here. Michael Wright, again, good to see you here. Alex, Ufi, I hope I say that right. If I do, great to see you here as well. C. Inman, Pez Reloaded, Richard, Charlie Bird, who was in last night as well, so good to see you back. Hopefully you've got a beer in hand as well, Charlie, tonight, and Steve and Carl. Goran, Stratos Greek Tutorials, good to see you here as well. Pei, Andrew, good to see you here. We've got Adnan, and who else do we have in? Pascal, thank you very much for joining in tonight. Abhay, I hope I say that's right. Casho, wow, we've got some new faces in here tonight, I think. So what we're going to do this evening is just a couple of, sort of just a general chat about some of the things that have happened. Two key things, WordPress 5.6 and some of the key features that brings with it, and also Elementor Cloud, which I know was a little bit of, well, for some people a shock, for others probably no shock whatsoever, but maybe a little frustration with what they perceive may happen with the future of Elementor, and if it becomes something that you have to have this sort of Elementor Cloud platform to be able to use Elementor Pro. So those are the things we want to talk about tonight, and like I say, this is a two-way conversation. I'm going to give you some information, a little bit of sort of my opinion, and then I'd love to get your opinions in the chat. So that's what we're going to kind of cover tonight. And if there's time at the end of it, we'll also do a bit of a Q&A like we normally do. But I do want to try to keep tonight a little bit shorter than we might do normally, just because it's kind of an impromptu thing. So I've had to push a few things to the side to be able to do this evening. Okay, I hope everybody is doing well tonight. And like I say, wherever you are all safe and looking after yourselves. Okay, so the first thing we want to cover this evening is Elementor, WordPress Cloud Hosting, and Elementor Pro. Now, I don't really have many notes on this side of things because I don't think there's that much more information out there. I know that a few people asked for Verdi, who's instrumental in the Facebook group and is part of the Elementor team, to sort of come in to have a chat tonight. Unfortunately, it is his birthday today, so his family already has sort of commitments. We can't really blame him for not wanting to jump onto this. And besides, I don't really think we probably would have heard anything more than we already know, because while he's sort of part of the Elementor team, I don't really think he's going to have any more information to make available to us than we already know. I think he's probably going to be in the same kind of vein of, he's under wraps as well to what he can say and what he does and doesn't know. So, my opinion on this. First of all, I don't think, for the foreseeable future anyway, that the cloud platform is going to stop or is going to sort of supersede the current way that we work with Elementor and Elementor Pro. I can't see there's a massive benefit to them doing that, because a lot of people, a big portion I would say of people that use Elementor Pro are probably designers, and therefore they already have their hosting, they've already got those things all set up and in place, and to suddenly cut those off, I think would take a massive chunk of their revenue straight out of the mix. And you kind of also have to ask yourself whether they got the support mechanism in place to make the cloud platform a place where people will get onto and start using, build a site on it, developers, for example, and test things out, and they find that they need technical support. They try to get it, and they're getting what a lot of people are currently experiencing on Elementor itself when it comes to their technical support, and that's long waiting times, or information is not really forthcoming. You kind of go through the normal checklist of, is it this? Have you done this? Can you send this information? And the to and fro can take a long time. That's not something you realistically want to have in place when you are running a cloud platform business alongside, you deal with the hosting, you deal with the software, all aspects of that entire website are all under one roof. So personally, I don't see them going down that only model like that way. I kind of see it as being something that will run like Brizzy does at the moment, kind of parallel to it. And then people that want the all-in-one solution, people that are not developers, people that have sort of maybe tried Wix or something and they want to go to the next level to have extra freedom, then maybe they'll look at a platform like Elementor with the cloud hosting, with everything in place. Because people do want ease. They do want one place to deal with things and one contact. Whether that support is good, bad, or indifferent, well, you only find that out once you've actually committed your time, your effort, and your money. And a lot of people, once they've done that, probably wouldn't look to change too quickly because the upheaval would be a bit of a nightmare. But that's just kind of my opinion. I don't think they're suddenly going to stop supporting and selling Elementor Pro as a standalone plugin. Will the pricing structure change? It could do. But again, I think that if Elementor turned around and suddenly doubled their pricing or took the 1,000 accounts model and then dropped that down to like 100 or something, there would be a massive outcry on that, and maybe enough people would walk away and give bad reviews and those kinds of things that can hurt a company to make them think twice about doing something like that. So that's kind of my initial thought process on it. But again, let me know what you think in the chat, because like I say, tonight is all about the chat side of things to get your idea. Let's have a little look. Clinton, what do you have to say? So you say, it would be bad business for Elementor to require running in their cloud. They won't do that. And that's kind of what I think. I don't feel that they will suddenly push everybody to that. The 5 million figure that is bandied around about the 5 million installs of Elementor, we have to take into consideration that's Elementor Free and Pro. So I would imagine there's probably a lot more free accounts than there are Pro accounts. So if they start to pee off, the developers that are people that are paying annually because they've got clients using this software, that will end up drying up. You've only got to look at the likes of companies like Visual Composer. If you think Visual Composer had, I think at its peak, probably around 3 million users, and that's because it was bundled with so many themes on places like Envato Elements, ThemeForest, sorry, not Envato Elements. So it meant they had a very captive market. You bought a theme and 9 times out of 10 it was bundled with Visual Composer. Now when Visual Composer became a bloated mess, it was slow, it was unwieldy, it wasn't great, it's just something that really wasn't a fun experience for anybody, people moved over and found Elementor. You think Elementor Free came out way before Elementor Pro came out, and I was using Elementor Free probably around 3.5, 4 years ago now, coming from having a lot of sites that were on Visual Composer. Now I wouldn't touch Visual Composer with someone else's money. Unfortunately, I've got some legacy clients that still use it, but that's what kind of happened there, is they lost their market share because people found an alternative. And that will happen to Elementor if they annoy enough people. You will have companies coming in, creating page builders, filling that market as quick as possible, which means that you and I, yes, we've got to relearn some software, but once you kind of know a page builder, you kind of know most of the page builders. You can really work your way around those. So I don't think they're going to do that, because I think their market share would be impacted way too much. Take the free version out of it, looking at the Pro version, which is their revenue model, they would just lose too much money there for what they're trying to gain from going cloud. So that's what I think. I don't think they're going to be that only. But what do you think? Let's have a little look at what some of you guys are saying. Michael Wright, let's just say, didn't they do something similar before, like dropping the unlimited sites to 1,000 sites on the expert plan? Yes, they did. I sort of put some information out there on that. I put a video out on that. And I can kind of understand why they did it, but I don't think they went about it the right way. So we don't want to rehash what's already been covered, but I think there's still a big difference. Most people that buy the expert plan don't come anywhere near to 1,000 clients using Elementor. And if you do, you're making enough money to not worry about these kinds of things. I think it was more where you had people were buying the unlimited license and then they were selling licenses for $10, or they were, doing something on places like Fiverr and things like that, where they were bundling Elementor Pro under their license as part of their service, which they could cancel at any time. But I kind of think that's what, prompted that kind of approach. But yes, it did annoy a lot of people, myself included. I can't deny the fact that it did really sort of wind me up the wrong way. But I think in reality, 1,000 sites is still more than enough for most people that are doing this and making money out of it. So what do we have? Do I think that the Elementor people are trying to mimic the Webflow business model, or are there something similar as part of their offerings? I don't know. I think Webflow is a different kind of platform that would appeal to a different kind of user. And I think there are enough people that are kind of evangelical about a platform like Webflow that I don't think they would entertain moving over to something like Elementor, primarily because a lot of people that are going to be using tools like Webflow, they want to have fast sites. And unfortunately, inherently, any kind of page builder that's built on top of WordPress as a platform that relies upon plugins to do other things will always have bloated code. It's just, that's how it's always going to be. There's nothing you can kind of do about that at this point in time with the technologies that we have. So I think to maybe try to get a market share from Webflow, I think that would be incredibly optimistic on their part, because I just don't think the technology stack that they're using can compete from the strength of a tool like Webflow. So personally, I don't think so. They might be trying to get some of it, but I don't think they would. I don't think their proposition would be good enough to compete with what Webflow offers as a platform. So that would be my opinion on it. Let's have a little look. Let's have a little look. So, Christos, do you think it would be convenient for a new designer that has not established any hosting plans in place to utilize Elementor Cloud? Look, I will be brutally honest about this. I would not have, if I'm given the opportunity, I would not have my page builder and my hosting on the same platform. Because for the support aspect of it, there's already an issue there, and there's already question marks there. How well can Elementor, their technical support, cope with moving on to a separate platform? I know they're talking about like there's different development teams, but ultimately I can't imagine they're going to have two totally separate support departments, one to deal solely with cloud and one to deal solely with Elementor, because with something like that, you'd have to scale to a massive level to provide support at the level that they need. They're already struggling with that side of things. You could only got to go on to the Elementor community Facebook group to see every day there's threads on there about people saying, how long does support normally take? You know, is 24/7 support, you know, is it good? Is it bad? So there's already an issue for some people out there with that side of things. So I would prefer to have my hosting separate. And apart from anything else, if I decide to change what platform that I use, as in what page builder or what software or anything like that for a client or a project or my own project, for example, I don't want to be tied to having to pay for a license on the new software, sort of also look for new hosting. So everything is kind of like all over the place. I want to have those things separate. So if I need to change things, my hosting is already set up. I've got everything in place. That's one less thing inside that technology stack that I have to take into consideration. Plus, if I find that my website is suffering because the hosting plan sucks, which can happen, you have a hosting company that can start off great, and then ultimately they end up being a bit crap. I don't want to be stuck. I want to sort of say, well, okay, I'm going to set my website. I'm going to migrate that now in the space of a couple of hours to get everything set up to a completely new hosting account. And then when I'm ready, I can flick the switch and boom, everything is in place after being fully tested. You don't have the luxury of that when you're reliant upon WordPress and your hosting and your page builder and anything else is included all under one roof. Then it's a big, big change when and if something goes wrong. So personally, even as a beginner in this market, I would still say you'll be better off having your hosting in one place which you can manage and your website building platform separate to it. That way, if something goes wrong with one of them or you want to change one of them, you can do it so much easier than having to deal with all of those things in the same place. That would be my takeaway from it, Christos. So hopefully that will kind of help point you in the direction that I would go. But again, anybody in the chat section, what would you do in this situation? How do you feel about having all those eggs in that one Elementor basket? Would this be something you would do? Something you would be comfortable with? Let me know in there. Like I say, for me, I wouldn't do it personally. And if they kind of force you into, if they did go down the route of forcing you into using the page builder and it would only be available on the cloud platform under Elementor's roof, I'd find a new service to go with, to be honest. It's not like we don't have options out there. If you want to go down the dynamic route, you do have Beaver Builder, maybe not to the same extent that you have with a tool like Elementor. You've also got Divi, and again, the same kind of thing comes into play. You've got Oxygen. You can move outside that and look at different ways to develop in. As we saw yesterday with Dave when he joined me, there's a lot of ACF-like features in a tool like Webflow. And when you look at the pricing on a platform like Webflow, and then you compare the whole cost that's incurred by building and hosting a website using, WordPress and Elementor or whatever tools you kind of use, you've got to total up all of the ongoing costs with that and then compare apples to apples. That's going to make your life a little bit more straightforward when you're budgeting and planning. But like I say, don't ever feel like you're beholden to any particular service or sort of toolkit out there, because when more people adopt a different platform, if they're unhappy with the one they're currently using, that puts more money into that other platform, that alternative platform, which means then they can develop quicker, they can take on more people, more support staff, more developers, they can listen to what people are looking for, and believe me, that gap in the market would be filled fairly quickly if it's not already probably 80 or 90% there with other tools. So that would be my takeaway from it. But like I say, that's just my opinion. So let me know your opinions in the chat. Okay, what else we have on here? Abhay, I hope I said that right. In future, if Elementor Pro launches, I guess swipe page will be more ahead of them. This as a WordPress page builder, Elementor is awesome. As per my research, swipe pages is a cloud station of a page B. Not really sure where you're going with that, so maybe I missed part of that. It really comes down to what you want. I mean, swipe pages, as we took a look at in one of my other videos, that's fundamentally all about building landing pages. So it's slightly different to what you would probably use Elementor for. But again, it really comes down to what do you use Elementor for? If you're using Elementor Pro and you are predominantly building landing pages, microsites, single page sites and so on, and you're not tapping into the things like dynamic content and those kinds of things, well, there's lots of options out there that can do the same thing without any real problem. So it comes down to what use case you've got, what tools you have to have, and what kind of projects you build. You know, there's lots of tools out there that give you more options, more opportunities, you know, different things. Okay, what else do we have? So Devin, you are loving swipe pages on AppSumo. I'm with you on that. I think it's an absolutely brilliant little service. I've got to reach out to the developer. I was talking to Dave, and Dave Foy knows the developer behind swipe pages, so I'm going to reach out and see if I can have a chat with them. I picked it up to do primarily the video I did recently, which was how to set up a sort of sideline hustle business using a couple of lifetime tools, and swipe pages was kind of the core behind all that. And I bought it just for that purpose, but I'm keeping it because it's one of those things that I can see a lot of uses for that for me moving forward with different things that I've got in the pipeline. That just means that I don't have to rely upon a tool like Elementor and WordPress and all those things. So my landing pages can be a lot quicker. That's the way I kind of look at it. Okay. What else do we have? Steve Pro, Elementor also got rid of the renewal discount. Also, didn't realize when I upgraded to expert. Yeah, I think if you're an early adopter like myself, we are grandfathered in, so we keep that 50% reduction. But I believe it went to 25%, and I'm not sure. Please, Steve, let me know. Has this completely gone now? Is this something that you have no renewal discount, at which point it is full 100% of the cost of Pro? Let me know in the chat, because I'm not too sure. I haven't looked at it in a long time. Okay. Ready with the reefer and the bunchies. Good on you, Vlad. I'm saying that. I'm just going to stick with the beers. Let's have a little look. Carl, do I think that Elementor are going to finally implement custom breakpoints for desktop resolutions? I feel we've been waiting for an awfully long time. Well, the crazy thing was, I looked back at a video I did when Elementor, probably one of the first videos I ever did with Elementor. So like I say, you're talking 3.5, maybe even 4 years ago. And at that time, they actually had more breakpoints in there. I think there was something like 5 or 6 breakpoints. So they took it out. They took what was already there out. And I just don't understand what's taken them so long. Because if you look on their GitHub, there is hundreds, if not thousands of people asking, when are we going to get multiple breakpoints? Where's the multiple breakpoints? Blah, 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 blah. This, again, is one of those things that I think Elementor are not doing themselves any favors with. They're just not listening to the things that people actually want. I go back to my Lottie whinge. What a waste of bloody time. Give people breakpoints what they want, not give them Lottie animations. Give them the tools they need to build effective sites. Sticking a bloody animation in there is not key and important to doing some of these really fundamental things. I will say no more. But that's kind of how I feel about it. It just doesn't, there's not a lot of listening going on to what the community wants. There's like listening, appeasing the community, and then doing what you want, which I think is a business model that will come back to bite you on the bum at some point. Okay, what else do we have? Spenny. I'm an Elementor Pro subscriber, can often wait 3 to 5 days for a response to a support email. Then often the response is very short and misses the point of the request. Again, I think this is something that a lot of people have said the same thing, is that you do wait around a long time to get any kind of response, if you get a response. And even when you do get that response, a lot of the time it doesn't actually answer the question you want or the problem you have. Now, I know Elementor, in the grander scheme of things, a pro license, and let's talk expert, let's not talk about single license or the 3 or 5 license. Let's talk about the expert license. it is insanely cheap for what you get. 1,000 websites running for $200 a year, whether you get a discount or not, kind of thing. $200 a year. If you're not making a profit out of that, there's something wrong with your business model. That's plain and simple. And I know the $200 in one country is completely different to $200 in another. Everything is proportional. I totally understand. There's going to be some countries where that is totally out of the question. But for the majority of people that use a tool like Elementor Pro, $200 is a business expense. It's not the end of the world. However, don't say you offer 24/7 support if you don't offer 24/7 support that's actually comes back in a reasonable time. You've got so many people out there. The other thing I would sort of say is, and this might be a little bit controversial, people might not like this, is maybe they need to look at a different way of supporting free users. If you've got 5 million installs of Elementor and 4 million are free and 1 million are paid subscribers, you pay it annually, those million people should get the priority service because they are putting the money into the pockets of the Elementor developers, the support teams, and those kinds of things, that mechanism. Maybe it's worth taking a look at a business model that says that if you're not a premium account subscriber, as in you're not paying for Pro, you either have to pay for support or you only have support via a mechanism like the online community. You've got to have some kind of reason why people are paying above and beyond just the Pro features. But I think trying to support every user, whether they're free or Pro, is unrealistic. When you've got 100 users, okay, you could do that. When you've got 5 million users, that becomes a problem. So maybe they need to start looking at ways of prioritizing those people that actually pay. Now, they might do this already because I've actually never had to reach out to support. So touch wood, that's going to stay the case. But just reading the number of people that are frustrated with it, fed up with it, and all those kinds of things, and a lot of the comments that came out when they were talking about cloud version of Elementor, one of the first things they said was about the support, and also the fact that support is already a bit crappy when it comes to the Pro version. How are they going to cope when they move over to another platform that has to be supported, i.e. the hosting? So for me, I think they need to look at ways of dealing with that. And if that means, like I say, that you've got to charge people or not offer premium support, there's lots of businesses out there that do this. Wave Accounting, which I've talked about in the past, that's a free platform. But if you want technical support or you've got questions, you pay. You buy a block of support and then you have that and it ticks off each time you contact support or any kind of help. So I can't see why that's an unrealistic business model to look at. You can't give these things away for free and support it in the same vein that you try to offer support for people that are paying for this and then not getting the support level that they feel they should have. So that would be my opinion. Okay, sorry, Steve Pro. No, because you're already a customer, I was getting a 50% discount per year renewal before I upgraded. Yeah, I think a lot of people, if I'm correct, there was an issue at one point where a lot of renewals didn't actually auto-renew and people lost their renewal discounts. I don't know what they did, if they honored that or what, I have no idea. But yeah, I know there's a few people were a little bit bummed by that whole situation. Let's have a little look. Clinton, what have you got to say, sir? Elementor Pro will run core native code in their cloud. This will provide superior performance. Well, I would hope if that's the way they're going to go, that they would do that. But the way they're talking about it right now is saying that you basically have just WordPress, Elementor, and a cloud platform bundled into one lump. You can then install probably 99.9% of plugins out there. There are some plugins that are not supported or they're not allowed for, I'm sure, technical reasons. So we'll have to wait and see. I think we can predict things, but I think none of us really know exactly what's going on over at Elementor HQ. So, Andrew, what have we got to say? Having seen what happened to Brizzy this week, regardless of the cause, I don't think it's a good idea to have hosting and Elementor in the same environment, i.e. Elementor Cloud. And that kind of reiterates my point. Brizzy Cloud, yes, they did have an outage, which I believe was because there was basically a kind of attack on their domain, which meant their domain was kind of suspended. So it wasn't the cloud hosting that was a problem, it was a a sort of attack of some sort on their domain, which meant that kind of went into when I say investigation mode, as it were, which I'm sure is probably just an automated thing if a domain gets hammered for some reason in whatever setup they've got. So unfortunate, I'm sure they'll put some kind of redundancy in place that if that happens, there's a fallback solution. You know, as anyone that's built a website for someone, I'm sure we think we've done everything possible and we carry on with our day, and then 6 months later we get an email or a phone call with a panic and something's gone wrong with the website, and it's just an eventuality that we never ever thought of. And then we rectify it, we sort that out, and then we put something in place that means that doesn't happen again. We mitigate the chances of that happening. And I'm sure that's what will happen over at Brizzy Cloud based upon the experience they've had over the last couple of days and the backlash they got from it. You know, again, it kind of goes down to that same kind of thing that you can put as many plans in place as you want, but there will always be something that will crop up that you hadn't envisaged that will cause a problem. It's the nature of technology. It moves so fast, there's always something coming along. And there's so many incredibly intelligent people out there that only want to destroy things, and they'll take it as a personal challenge to try to destroy something, that I think no matter what you do, you will always end up with a potential problem somewhere in that chain of tools. And if you don't, you know, if Elementor, to go back to Elementor to sort of move away from Brizzy, if they are just going to lease servers, which I'm sure that's what they're going to kind of do from reading between the lines, they're not exactly going to buy their own server farm and have their own dedicated, you know, sort of server setup, then no matter how good that setup is, and in different countries, if they're using the same company, you know, globally kind of thing, there's always the chance that something can go wrong. An update to the hardware can go wrong, an update to the software can go wrong, and yes, redundancy can be put into place, but there's still always the potential for the redundancy, the backups, all those things to have a technical problem. And this, like I say, is where you have, imagine now, you've got your hosting in place, and Elementor in place, and WordPress in place, and then there's an update to all three in the space of a couple of days, which we know can happen. You're only going to look at WordPress 5.5 and Elementor 3's launch, and what happened there, and all three of those things, like a deck of cards, could literally just collapse. And that means the fault finding, is it the hosting, is it the software, is it a plugin, is it WordPress, is it my theme, what the hell is it, suddenly becomes a bloody nightmare. So for me, it's a no-go, thank you very much. That's what I think anyway. Okay, so let's have a little look. Okay, we've got quite a few different comments inside here, so I'm going to just jump through. We'll have a Q&A at the end of this as well, so we can sort of just chuck some more questions around. But I want to move on to WordPress in a moment, because I'm conscious of the fact we spent at least half an hour or so talking just about Elementor, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about Elementor. Okay, what else do we have? Full price on renewals. Steve, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. There was a few people had that same issue, which is, like I say, it is a bummer. But like I say, it all kind of depends how they deal with it, and if you're one of those unfortunate people that your renewal for some reason didn't renew, and then you got charged the full price and you lost your discount, and they didn't honour your original discount, I think that would be a little bit unfair. So I don't know if that was the situation for you. I know I had that problem with Ocean WP when they moved it to freemium, or what it's called, which I still don't like. That would be pretty rubbish if they didn't honour that, if that's what happened. Okay, good evening, Susan. Good to see you here. Neil Williams, I like Lottie. Look, there's nothing wrong with Lottie, but it's not exactly a priority for a lot of people. If you wanted animated icons, there's lots of ways you can put animated icons into a website. I think breakpoints is something that, for a lot of people that develop websites, is probably a little bit more important. But like I say, nothing wrong with Lottie, just I think there's more to it. Okay, let's have a little look. Okay, so I'm going to quickly flick through these. We'll come back, like I say, to a couple of these, and we'll talk a few more of those points. Okay, so next up on the list, let me put my beer out the way so I don't knock it over and be really upset and cry because I just ruined a pile of tech. Let's take a look at the next thing I want to cover. So, next up on our list is WordPress 5.6 and the key breaking changes, should we say. Whether they're breaking, I don't know. Whether there's such an issue, I don't know. I think this is one of those things that we have to kind of wait and see to kind of get a feel for what's going to happen there. So what do we have? I need to get my notes on screen a second, so please do bear with me while I take a look at my notes. Okay, so the first thing we have is a new theme. Now, if anybody's seen the new theme, you'll know it's a pretty ugly looking thing. So I'm going to pull this up. Hopefully the screen will be okay, so I'll just jump over. This was flickering earlier on, so I hope that everything is okay with this. So this is what you get with the new 2021 WordPress theme. Yeah. Not really too sure who was key to actually designing this, but I kind of get the feeling they probably weren't being paid very much, because let's be honest about it, that is not a good looking theme. So has anybody actually updated to WordPress 5.6 yet? If you have, what was the experience like? Have you found any problems at all? If you found problems, what were the solutions you found? Because the key thing that I think a lot of people have had problems with is to do with jQuery. So there's a lot of, did I say 2001? I might have said 2001. 2021, we'll go with 2021. So yeah, one of the biggest key things that I know a lot of people experienced issues with is to do with the jQuery side of things. So if you've updated or you are thinking of updating and you do find you have a problem, and this isn't with the core of WordPress, this is more to do with plugins that are using jQuery and maybe an out-of-date version and those kinds of things. I haven't looked into this too much, so I'm only going to take a sort of really light overview of what's going on and kind of get your feedback on it. But if you do have a problem, one of the first things that they recommend to sort of install is this Enable jQuery Migrate Helper plugin, which is a free plugin. You know, there's no cost to this kind of thing. And this apparently has fixed an absolute boatload of issues for people. I know that Kyle over at the admin bar had some problems with a few different websites had problems and so on. And he installed that plugin on the sites, and for the most part, that rectified the problem. So if you do update to 5.6, or God forbid, auto-updated to 5.6, which there are hosting companies out there that are doing that, and some sites might actually do the same kind of thing, just take a look. That could be the reason why. You know, obviously, put a backup in place, always have a backup system in place. We know, we've talked about this many times. Staging site if you've got the opportunity, if you don't have the auto update side of things. But personally, I would say wait till at least 5.6.1, maybe a little longer. Let a couple of these sort of day one or day zero bugs be ironed out, rectified, sorted out, and all those kinds of things. So just stay away from updating just yet. Test it out, make sure it works if you want to, but I would not put this on a production site. Like I say, with the auto updates that they released in 5.5, which is probably one of the stupidest ideas to put into the core of WordPress I've ever seen in my life, just be careful with that. Now, let me just switch back over, and I just want to show you, I just installed a site with 5.6. Now when you log into the dashboard, for some reason I don't have it in here, so it's not showing up for me. But when you log in and you go into your dashboard and into updates, you can see it says current version is 5.6. Last checked on so-and-so. They're saying this site will not receive automatic updates for new versions of WordPress. However, I believe, depending upon your host, because I think this might be something to do with SiteGround, that they've disabled it for the very reason that they don't want automatic updates to cause problems for clients, because I'm sure there was a real problem with that when 5.5 was updated. But it might be worth sort of making sure that you log into the dashboard, take a look at the updates, and there is an option in there that allows you to control if those automatic updates are carried out or not. So I would say you're probably better off, you know, setting that up inside there to make sure that you've got that turned off so you can manually manage your updates. Sure, there's going to be times where, you know, a plugin causes a problem and your site goes offline because you didn't update it, but I would say the chances of that are probably slimmer than having updates being pushed out on like day one, as it were, when a new version of WordPress comes out, and then lots of sites, if you deal with clients, all fall over. So personally, I would disable that, so you are in control of managing that aspect of the update process. Don't let that be an automated system, because I think that's, with WordPress, with the combination of plugins and themes and hosting and all those kinds of things, I just think you are asking for a boatload of trouble by letting auto updates have anything to do with the update process in WordPress. That's my sort of 2 pence worth. D123. So SiteGround has overridden the admin update settings in the past. I'm pretty sure that it was a case. Don't quote me on this one because I don't know for 100% because it wasn't something that I looked into any real detail. But I'm pretty sure that when the 5.5 update rolled out, that SiteGround had a system that would automatically update the core of WordPress that was unrelated to you. You might have been able to disable it, but I believe, like I said, I'm only saying this might be just total abject misinformation on my part, that it was being automatically updated and you didn't really have a lot of control over that. So sites were being automatically updated, and obviously there were a portion of people that might have had conflicting themes and plugins and tools that had issues with it. So could be wrong on that front, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read when it sort of like it first came out. So Chris, totally agree. Thank you for saying that. Do not enable auto updates on major releases. My God, what were they thinking? Yeah, I can't understand it. I mean, I know that from probably a big portion of people that actually run a WordPress website, they don't update things very regularly. They've got a website, they don't look at it from month to month to month to month, and updates, I've got a website, I don't need to update it. So I think they were kind of catering for that market to try to avoid some of the probably the security issues from older versions of WordPress, because as we probably all know, when WordPress releases an update, whether that's a major update or a bug fix update, they put a list of what they've fixed in there, and that kind of potentially opens up telling people what to look for to find vulnerabilities. You know, so that can kind of be a little bit of a, well, we fixed this important bug, and that's okay now. And then anybody that has dodgy dealings and looking for ways to get into WordPress sites, which we know happens on the daily, they're just kind of being given a sort of a free pass card that just says, look here for a vulnerability. And then there's probably going to be millions and millions of WordPress sites that have not updated, have that vulnerability in place, and they can just be hacked all day, every day. So I can understand the logic why they do it, or why they did it. I just don't think it was something that was a particularly good idea when you know WordPress and how can you say, volatile the structure is when you start installing third-party plugins and themes. You know, so in a perfect world where you've only got WordPress and nothing more, that's probably worked perfectly. But we all know that utopian idea of WordPress is something that doesn't exist. Okay, let's have a couple of little questions. Let's have a look. So there's a couple of problems I see where people talk about Jet Smart Filters and Jet Engine and things like that. I believe, and again, don't quote me on this, I believe that Cockablock or that the Jet team are aware of the problem with 5.6, and I think they said they're rolling a fix out for it either today, based upon their time zone, or tomorrow. But I believe they are aware of the issues that are happening with the current version or the new version of WordPress. So this is something that I believe is in the process of being fixed. But again, if you've updated without a backup and without a staging site, maybe this is one of those things that gives you a good reason to look at that and putting that into place moving forward, so you don't have any problems, technical problems with tools like Jet Engine, Jet Smart Filters and so on, having issues with the latest versions. Okay, so Richard Ward, what do we have here, sir? You're right, they did mine yesterday. I had my eye off the ball, been rolling back all day. Yeah, Rich, look, this is something that I can understand why the hosting company would want to do that. Again, for the same reason that WordPress would want their core software to be updated to the latest version to get rid of any bugs, any security issues and flaws, all those kinds of things. But the problem is there's not enough time for a lot of third-party developers to be able to have that beta version in place, tested, fixing any problems that are there, and then rolling it out prior or in the same time as when the update to WordPress actually rolls out. So there's always going to be that buffer where it's a catch-up being played between WordPress and developers. So I just think it's one of those things that I don't think hosting companies should have that as a default action. I can understand it, like I say, from a security point of view, makes total sense. But from a user's point of view, as in you or me when we have a website on there, that can just open up a massive can of worms that can just be a real nightmare, a stressful situation. So yeah, I didn't think it was something that I'd made up or misheard. I kind of thought that was what the case was with SiteGround. So thankfully, I don't have any live sites that are client sites or personal sites. I only use SiteGround as a development platform for the tutorials, for testing things out, for doing live streams, when I want to check things out and run a demo site and so on. So the main reason being is the company that I use, which I've said about before, so I'm not trying to sell. I've got no affiliate link to them or anything. I've just used them for the last 15, 16 years in the UK, which is a company called Klook. But their technical support is something that if there's a problem, I get an answer in minutes, and I'm basically in control of running the server for myself, which means that I don't have to worry about them doing things in the background automatically. Plus, I'm notified if something is due to be updated. So it gives me more control over what I need to do to maintain my service for my clients. And I just rather that. I don't like this automated, it's being updated and you have no control. So that's my personal kind of opinion on this side of things. Okay. John, but the likes of Wix auto updates, so it's been seen as a way of being competitive. When Wix, I think we have to compare WordPress and, WordPress.com is more akin to Wix because it's a closed platform. Whereas WordPress, the self-hosted, that's an open platform, which means that trying to have a Wix-like mentality on an open platform is never going to work because you are not in control of all the variables. This is where places like Webflow have a much better way of working because its entire structure is their structure. So it means their technology stack is something they're totally in control of, which means that when they roll an update out, they've tested that to the hopefully nth degree. And when that's rolled out, they know how their servers work, how their software works, how all the different things like that works. There's always the inherent issue then, because Webflow, from what Dave was saying yesterday, now has more third-party resources which you can tap into and pull in. And I think if that expands, that then would potentially open up breaking changes because they've opened their architecture up to third-party developers, which could then open up problems like we see in WordPress, which is self-hosted. So that's what I would say. I think trying to sort of keep up with Wix, I think is a really bad way of going about it because it's a completely different infrastructure and a completely different way of working. Okay, Lee. I've noticed Elementor seems to be getting a bit of hate lately. Why do you think this is? I'll go back to what I said a little bit earlier in this live stream. I'm not sure if you were here at the time, Lee. But I think the support is something that they're getting hate for because it's not as good as what people think it should be, which is understandable. When you're paying money for something and you see this 24/7 support, you do expect it to be in a reasonable time frame, and waiting days for most people is not a reasonable time frame. So I think that's one reason. I think the second is they don't always listen to the community, which means that, to go back to my Lottie kind of thing, lots of people have been asking for features that, from a design point of view, things like different page breaks. You know what I mean. These are things that people want and need and have been asking for a long time for those. But instead of giving those people what they want, they're putting shiny bells and whistles on and not catering for the core tools that you need to build effectively. So I think those are things that are kind of annoying people. I don't think the cloud thing helps because whether that was leaked or whether that was just not the best way of going about actually launching that new platform, as it were. I think people are looking at this thinking, well, you raised $15 million. I think it was $15 million. And there was lots of questions asked at the time what they were going to be doing with that money for that investment. And I think people have kind of been worried about the future of Elementor, and they've just done different things in the past, like we talked about earlier, taking the unlimited plan and then making it limited. You know, those little things. And again, without grandfathering people in, without honouring those licenses that people have paid for, even if it was just for the year in which they bought that license. All these things erode trust in your business and in your integrity as a company. And when you lose integrity as a company, you will start to hemorrhage clients. Because when you don't trust a company, you don't want to give them your money. And people, even though they might be tied into a platform like Elementor, there are still options available for a big portion of the people that pay for Elementor Pro. So they will vote with their feet. They'll walk away and they'll find another platform. You only got to look at Elementor 3, which again was another thing that I think really sort of annoyed a lot of people, because it would have made more sense to have held back on Elementor 3's release and not release it at pretty much the same week as WordPress 5.5. When you combine all these things together, I think what that does is, like I say, it does erode trust, erodes faith, which means that people, they become a little less understanding of the company. They expect more, they're not getting what they expect, and therefore they start to get fed up. And people will either vote with their feet and they won't renew, or they will be very vocal about it, because we all have platforms now where we can go and we can say, when we are really peed off about something, we can go and shout that out in places like Facebook, Twitter, those kinds of things. So I think it becomes a much more open platform for people to complain. And then what you'll have is you'll have people that will go, well, I've experienced the same thing. I'm still waiting for my support ticket that's been there for a week. And then you'll have a group of people that will all be experiencing the very similar thing, and that can escalate. You get that snowball effect. So I think those are some of the reasons probably why, Lee, that Elementor is getting some hate at the moment. And when a platform grows to the point of having 5 million plus user base, you're going to have a percentage of those that are not happy for some reason. And like I say, we've got lots of vocal ways of being able to express our frustrations. So I think that's probably part of the reasons why. Okay, I'm going to scoot down to the end of these now. What do I think is the best reseller hosting, Video Boy? I couldn't tell you, if I'm brutally honest about it. There are so many platforms out there that give you good service, maybe bad support, or great support and not great service. I do like Cloudways. I found, in my experience, generally SiteGround is pretty decent. I don't like the inode or whatever it's called way of managing the amount of space or storage or settings or whatever the heck it is that's on there. I just don't like that aspect. Just tell me, how much space am I using and how much space have I got left? Don't give me these inodes and all this kind of junk. I like that. Which leads me back quickly to Elementor and the cloud platform. I don't see the point in why they give you a bandwidth allowance and a visitor allowance. Surely they don't need both. Because I believe in their plan, the first plan, it's like 25,000 visits a month and something like 50 gigabytes of bandwidth, something like that. Don't quote me 100% on it. But it's like, well, what's the point in one versus the other? You know, it's like, surely bandwidth is the only thing that needs to have any impact upon the amount of resources that you're allocated. What's the point in the two? If anybody's got a reason for this, let me know in the chat, because for me, that was the first thing that jumped out to me. It's like, well, what's the point in having a hard limit on bandwidth and a hard limit on visitors? Just seems counterintuitive. Anyway, did not like SG support, Carl. I found it quite slow. People were saying how good it was, so maybe I caught them in that transition where, you know, people have said it's not as good as it used to be. I don't know. Okay. Visitors are both CPU and bandwidth. Okay, that's fair enough. But again, I still don't see the reason to have both. Excuse me. Just have one or the other. You know, I've never seen the logic in it. Like I said, that just might be my lack of understanding of how servers work effectively. Vlad V. I host on Google Cloud. Couldn't be happier. Awesome. I now actually tried it myself. Thank you, Carl. Thank you for 100% agreeing with me. Checks in the post. Yeah, so, it's one of those things that, I don't know. I think we have to wait and see. I think we can all take the guessing game. We can all predict what we think is going to happen with, Elementor and the cloud side of things. But we kind of just have to wait and see what happens in the short, the medium, and the long term. Okay, let's just quickly wrap up a few things now about WordPress 5.6. The key thing that I want to talk about, let me just again switch over to my other screen so I can see my notes, because there are a couple of different things inside here. We've already covered the new theme for 2021. We've talked about the automatic updates. We talked about the jQuery issues and the Enable jQuery Migrate Helper plugin. The other thing is it now has support for PHP 8, which obviously isn't going to make much of a difference for most of us, because most of us are not going to be running PHP 8 on our servers just yet, because I can't imagine many hosting companies are rolling that out just yet anyway. But they're kind of future-proofing themselves for, when that becomes something that's stabilized. We have 8.1, 8.2, and so on. So that's quite useful. Always handy to have that little bit of future-proofing inside there. But I don't think that's going to have much of an effect for most of us. Now, the thing that is probably one of the key things is the REST API and the application passwords. So I'm just going to quickly go back to that site that I had. I'm going to log into the dashboard, and let me just change screens over a second. And I'm going to go into the users section and into my profile. And once we're in there, we now have a new section for application passwords. So we can add a new application password name, and we can add a new application password. Now, this is basically, if you ever used certain sort of plugins that have like an API call for a service like Google Maps, different things like that, you have to set up an API, or you have to set up an account, and then maybe a project, or maybe an application or something. If you're using Twitter and using Facebook, you've got to do these things. This kind of works in the same way. You would set that up, and some plugins would request access, and you could set up an application password that ties into that plugin. Like I say, I'm not really understanding this from a huge level, because it's above my pay grade at the moment. But what they're sort of like they're worried about is the fact that this could lead to potential security issues because of that link, whereas before you didn't need it. So I don't know. I mean, is this something that you would be concerned about? Let me know. If you've got a better understanding of this, let me know exactly, what your thoughts are, your understanding of how it all works, and where the security kind of implications could come in, because I'd like to know. Okay, I'm going to open up back on the Brewdogs. We are back on the Brewdogs. I'm still waiting for my sponsorship deal to come in, which to date hasn't happened. So excuse the little can opening sounds. So let's have a little look at some of the comments we've got inside the chat section. Let's see if I can answer some of these. Michael Wright. I used Klook many years ago, as they were one of the only UK hosts that supported Macromedia Cold Fusion. And there's a comment a little bit further on about Macromedia. There's a blast from the past. Klook have always been great for me. They're not the fastest, as in like the hosting isn't the fastest. You're always going to find something out there that's a little bit better. They're not the most expensive. But for me, they've just been worth their absolute weight in gold for their technical support. They go above and beyond anything to do with just server-related questions that I may have. There's been a number of times there's been an issue with a client's websites. There's a 501 or 503 or whatever the heck they are. And I'm like, okay, what's the problem? And I've contacted them and said, I've got a 503. The client's coming back and saying there's a problem. Any ideas what's going on? And 9 times out of 10, they come back and go, yeah, this plugin's caused a problem with so-and-so. You need to look into that. Which means that I spend less time then fault finding, because they've got access to more information to do with their servers and potentially server logs that are going to give them more info. So I've just found their technical support to be, I can't praise it highly enough in all the years that I've been working with them. So for me, if you're a UK-based company, or UK-based freelancer, or just looking for somewhere to host your own websites, I do highly recommend Klook. They're not massively expensive, and like I say, their technical support is bang on point, excuse me. But if you want global, I would say Cloudways is one that I definitely do like. And as I've said in past live streams and in past videos, I'm already have my development site of WPTuts up on there, and I will, once that is ready to go live, at some point when I actually get some time to do it, I will be hosting it on Cloudways, just because it's just a great platform that if I do something and I need scalability and I want to manage it, I can just log on there. I can up my allowance. I can 2, 3, 4, 6 CPUs, up the storage, up the RAM, to cope with that sort of influx of data, that influx of traffic. And then when that calms down, I can just basically wind it back down. And I only get billed for the resources that I use on, I believe it's something like either an hourly basis or a 10-minute basis. It might even be a minute-by-minute basis. But it just means that it's very, very flexible, so you can deal with those spikes in traffic if you need to. Great if you've got a client that's on e-commerce and they could do sort of like Black Friday deals. They could be doing Christmas deals, those kinds of things where the traffics might spike, considerably. It's good to have control over those side of things. That's what I would say anyway. Okay, what else do we have? Macromedia brings back memories. That's very true. Going way back. I mean, I've been doing sort of online training videos and things for, Christ, years. And I mean, many years. When I was teaching, I did the same thing. And I got a contact inside Macromedia. And it was awesome because I was doing tutorials on things like Dreamweaver, did a couple on Flash, but I used to do Photoshop and all those kinds of things. They would send out the full Macromedia studio out to me on what's called an NFR, which is a not for resale, which is what they send out to reviewers and people that create content and stuff like that. So I used to get, every time there's a new suite of Macromedia tools would come out, I'd get a box with all of that in, full access to it all. So I was quite bummed when they sold, Adobe bought them and then kind of killed off a big portion of what Macromedia was. Because I think Macromedia as a company were a much nicer company with a much better vision than Adobe has. So it's quite disappointing when they kind of bought that out and we kind of lost Macromedia as it was. But yeah, I've got very fond memories of Macromedia. They were a good company with some really good products. Flash not being one of them, but we'll say no more about that. What else do we have? I still use Dreamweaver MX educational version for a few simple sites. Going back to Dreamweaver, I'm like, it just looks like an alien place to me these days. But I'm sure it's still a good platform. I think it's definitely moved on a lot from what it used to be when it was a Macromedia product. I used to love, like the MX Collection was a suite of tools that expanded what it did, which was a company called Interact. And again, I had good relationships with them. I used to get their software off them as well because I used to create content for them. And I used Dreamweaver and the Interact tools to create my first content management system. So I built that because the Interact tools were basically like a rapid application development platform which linked into Dreamweaver, which meant you could take these sort of like libraries and creating relational databases and sort of pulling in dynamic data in very similar fashion to what we do now with dynamic tags inside Elementor. It had all those kinds of tools in there in a more code stroke visual way of working. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth, was working with those kinds of tools. So I got real fond memories of Dreamweaver alongside the Interact plugins, which, like I say, again, Adobe bought the Interact plugins. That was become the, it's like ADDO, I can't think what it was called. And they basically killed that off as well, which was such a shame because they were really, really good platform, really good tools. JVG, nice to see you too. Thank you very much for joining me this evening in this sort of last minute live. Front page, don't ever speak about front page, Carl. No. That's like designing a website with Word, which was terrible. Steve Pro, my first foray into web design was Dreamweaver. No, No, I'm going to go way, way back before Dreamweaver, but yeah. Vlad, you could do dynamic stuff in Dreamweaver, connect directly to databases. Absolutely, you could. It was brilliant. And like I say, the interact tools meant that linking to the databases was super, super simple. Really, really easy to do. And it just opened up a world of possibilities. And that's kind of where I got my passion for dynamic, building dynamic websites. Is all to do with what you could do with Dreamweaver and the interact tools. So I created a lot of content for those tools years and years and years ago. And I got contacted by like different magazines like .NET Magazine and Computer Arts and things like that. And I created video tutorials for their cover magazines. So going back years and years ago, used to be featured in those magazines. So that was kind of like where I learned how to do a lot of these things. So it was great fun. Really, really enjoyed all that kind of time and look back at it with fondness. But I think we are so spoilt for choice now with tools like Elementor and Brizzy and Beaver Builder, all those kinds of things. And WordPress. I mean, I hated WordPress to start off with. It's only a couple of years ago that I actually started using WordPress. I just didn't like it prior to that. But we are in such an amazing position right now to be able to build such powerful websites with tools like, Elementor Pro, with dynamic content, linking it through with Jet Engine, with ACF and those kind of things. It's beyond imagining what you can do with it now. It's fantastic. Let's have a little look. Ooh. So, Ron, I spent all morning here in California rebuilding a site after a client deleted Elementor template. Default kit deletes the site settings. It's crazy. They'll allow this is not recoverable. Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head when it comes to these things. It's all well and good to have these sort of global sweeping settings that can change something. By God, it doesn't have open you up to some problems. And if you give client access, that can just be a nightmare. So I feel your pain. I've had the same kinds of things myself in the past where you give access to a website, client logs in, does something, and they phone you and go, my site doesn't work anymore. Okay, have you done anything? Have you logged in, made any changes? No, I haven't touched it at all. And then you log in, you look at the logs, and you see, yeah, you've logged in, and you've just wiped out an absolute boatload of work. So I feel your pain there, and it's not a place that's nice to be. So, Ron, all good luck with that. I hope you get it back online, and I hope you're charging the client for that extra work that you've had to do. If not, put something in place moving forward that if they do it again, or any of your clients do it again, you cover yourself for recompense to make sure you don't waste a day fixing someone else's problems. Okay, Carl, you said front page again. If you do that again, I'm booting you out of here. It's simple as that. You might be helping me out in the comment section, but you will be booted. No one comes in here and says the F word. Anthony, yeah. Notepad. Oh, the joys. Go live, yes. That was Adobe's attempt at creating a sort of Dreamweaver alternative. And if I remember rightly, that was pretty bad. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world. Pascal, yeah, front page was partially integrated into Word. Did anyone ever actually build a website using Word? Remember those repeatable backgrounds, tileable backgrounds that look like paper textures and papyrus fonts? That's kind of reminiscent of what people used to build, if you ask me, when it came to using Word as the platform for building their websites, with 1,000,001 tables and animated GIFs. The dark days of web design, for sure. Okay, what else do we have? Let's have a couple more questions. Oh, speaking of questions, I want to do this before, because I forgot to do it when we started doing our questions, and I spent literally 10 minutes doing this. So now when we do questions and answers, we're going to have this little bumper. How cool is that? I just forget to use it all the time, so I never press the button to actually make it go. But I wanted to do it just so you could see it, so cool. Anyway, that's just me talking rubbish. Netscape Navigator, Netscape Navigator had a HTML editor you could play with many moons ago. It wasn't called Netscape Navigator though, was it? It was Netscape Composer, I think it was, or something like that. Netscape Composer, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And again, that was pretty terrible. Now, Coffee Cup, Michael, if I remember rightly, that actually had quite a good reputation for being a fairly decent coding platform for building websites. I vaguely remember trying it out, but I don't think I ever did anything with it. But yeah, I do remember Coffee Cup. And Shay Site Media, I feel like you're taking a trip down memory lane. Archive.org now starts providing all Flash games and other animations. Well, I've got to say, one of the best sites out there, and we have kind of digressed from what we were talking about to start off with, but we've kind of covered Elementor and WordPress. Let's just talk. The Wayback Machine is one of those things that I really like, that website. So if you've built websites or you've had websites of your own, and you've forgotten what they looked like 10 years ago, go to the Wayback Machine, I think it's .org, and just put in the name of your site, your URL, or just have a little look in there at some of your older sites. It's so much fun to see what your sites looked like. It's not a perfect representation, but most of them work fairly well, so you can get a kind of good feel. And I've done it for a site that I used to do, which was the first kind of project, which in my training side of things was a site. I bought a domain called webzone2000.co.uk, and I think I bought .com, which kind of ended up becoming WZ or WZ if you're in America 2K. And going back and looking at some of those, I know some of you are going to go and take a look now on the Wayback Machine and go and take a look at some of those. So by all means do. WZ2K.co.uk. And go back a couple of, like 10 years ago and take a look on there. But it's just good fun to go back and take a look because there's so many iterations of that site. And I couldn't remember doing them. You go on there, it's like, oh, I forgot I did that site in that color scheme and that kind of layout. So it's just quite funny to see those older versions of your sites. But from a practical point of view, if you are building a site for a client, and I've done this myself, you accidentally delete their content to put a new site together, and then afterwards you think, bugger, I really forgot to copy something off their site. Some of the text to do something on their site could be a sort of copyright, it could be terms and conditions, could be anything. The Wayback Machine can be an absolute godsend for you because you can go back on there, see what dates that page or that site was online, click on it, open it back up, and then quickly copy and paste that, dump it into Notepad, strip all the HTML off it, and then put it back in place. So I've done that many times myself. That's a little insider secret for you. But it's been an absolute godsend to be able to do that with just 2 minutes of your time. So check out the Wayback Machine. It's quite a good fun site to spend a little bit of time looking at old sites that you were involved in, developed, built, and so on. Okay. Let's have a little look. Right, I'm going to make sure that we've got, because these conversations go on inside the chat, I want to make sure that I don't sort of just jump in, excuse me, and accidentally come in halfway through a conversation and have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. Ron, again, I'm going to pull you back up here. Thanks for commenting. I'm more than peeved that Elementor doesn't hide this template. Yeah, I think when it comes to the template side of things, we could do with a little bit more control over what can and can't be done in there. Might be nice to sort of have the ability to lock templates to make them like a super admin only, something along those lines, which does give you that little level of security, knowing that your clients can't accidentally go in there and cause you an absolute boatload of pain to deal with. So yeah, again, it would be nice if they did something like that. Gerald, Flywheel does the same with bandwidth and visits. If someone could tell me why that makes sense, if there's any kind of real technical reason why limiting bandwidth and or visits makes any sense, please do in the comment section, because, or the chat, or the comments if you're watching the replay. Because for me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, surely having bandwidth just makes more sense. Just makes sense to me. Maybe it's just me. Okay, let's have a little look. I did not use Word to create sites. No, but you talked about front page, Carl. That's even worse. GeoCities. Oh, now you're talking. Now we're going back in time. We'll say no more. Okay. Ooh, OBS and Stream Deck. Nice bumpers. Actually, no, it's not, Chris. It's not OBS, and it is a Stream Deck. I will admit it is a Stream Deck. But it's not OBS. I'm actually, because I've moved over to Mac now for the live stream side of things, I'm using Ecamm Live, which was one of the key reasons why I moved over to a Mac for the live stream, because it's just such a nice way of working, and we've got everything set up. If you can see my desk, it looks lovely on camera. The desk in front of me is just cables and buttons and God knows what everywhere. So I've got an A10 mini on my one side, which allows me to switch between my main screen and my desktop screen, which I know you can kind of do inside Ecamm. I just don't like the way it works in there. I like to be able to just flick back and forth between screens. And then use my Stream Deck to switch between the different views. So when I want to talk about, don't forget to join up to the Facebook group. Link is there. Very difficult to see when you're doing it. It just works like a charm. So it allows me to set all these things up. And the same kind of thing goes for the slides. We can sort of pull the slides up like this. It's all just done inside Ecamm Live, which for me is just awesome. So I'm just trying to make the live streams just a little bit more polished, a little bit better. And I just like the fact that when we're having this conversation kind of thing and you make a comment, it's just nice that I can put those comments up on screen. It's easier than just me sort of reading the comment out that doesn't make sense to people. I just like it. Lyle, good to see you here. Did anyone see it? But did anyone mention anything regarding Oxygen? We talked about Oxygen a little bit right back at the beginning when we were talking about Elementor Pro and the cloud platform kind of things, and how you've got options and alternatives, so you don't ever feel like you're kind of pigeonholed into only using that platform. There are other ones that will come along and fill any gaps that you may find are lacking for whatever reason. So we did kind of talk about it, but not to any great depth. I think we talked about Oxygen in the past, and I'm hoping over the holiday period that maybe I'll get the opportunity, if I'm sober enough, to take a look at Oxygen in a little bit more detail. You know, it's one of those things that I do get asked a lot about Oxygen, but when I created content in the past for it, there were so few people took any notice of it. It just didn't really warrant the amount of time that it takes to set the environment up, test the platform, get an idea of how the heck it all works, because, you know, every time I do something like this, I move to a different kind of tool, I do have to spend quite a chunk of time just learning how that particular tool, function, platform, whatever it is, how that works, and understand it well enough so I can not only confidently show you how something works, but also not spend days and days and days going back and forth, trying to figure out how the heck I do something that I want to be able to do. So that's kind of why I haven't really jumped over into Oxygen. Plus, I kind of need, to do it justice, I need a project where I build an actual site with a tool like Oxygen. That gives me a better understanding of how it works. So hopefully that kind of explains why I really haven't invested any time into Oxygen, because I just don't want to give you information that's either already out there or just isn't very good. You know, hopefully what you can kind of see with the content I put out, especially the deep dives and the more advanced tutorials, is that it is, I want to give you some value in it. I don't want to just create content for the sake of creating content. So that's kind of a big part of why I haven't really jumped back into Oxygen, because of the learning curve that kind of comes with it and the smaller audience that are actually interested in it. So I won't say never, and I will go back and look at it. I just don't know when yet I will be taking a look at it. Carl, you are right. It is Netscape Composer, developed in 1997. Yeah. I remember trying to build some sites with that. It's funny how many browsers have kind of fallen by the wayside these days. 21 up bowls. Oxygen is great. I don't disagree with you in the slightest. I'm not the biggest fan of the interface, as many of you know. I've criticized that in the past. It might be totally functional, and I don't disagree that it is functional. But it could just do with being made to look a little bit more polished. And I think that's probably one of those things that puts a lot of people off, is because it just looks dated. I'm not saying that the functionality isn't there in bucket loads, because the number of people that are raving about it, you know, there's obviously something in it. It's obviously got some worth in it, that it is a good platform. I just think they could do themselves some favors just by making it look a little bit more pro. That's silly, but I'm a designer first, and the visuals are the thing that attract me to various different things. Excuse me. Paul, I take all in one backups of the site before granting any client access. What I would suggest is, if you are going to give client access, even if it's admin access, because some clients, they want access to the tools that you use, I would still look at something that allows you to create like a super admin that would be your level, and then give them access as an admin, so they get access to probably 99% of what you can do inside WordPress. But then there are still those couple of little things that you can hold back, just because that's the kind of thing that could cause problems, like we saw earlier on for Ron. Maybe that's the better way to go about, or maybe that's a way to go about it, is to give yourself super admin rights. Set up an admin that gives most of the functionality away, but those things that could break the site are disabled. You know, things like Elementor settings and things like that. You just disable all that, so they can't get access to that. That's kind of what I'd look at. Chris, are you talking about Oxygen Builder? I've been looking into that. I know this is in reply to 21 Up Bowls, but yes, this is Oxygen Builder that we're talking about. So just to answer your question, it's Oxygen Builder, yeah. Coffee Cup is still going, isn't it? It could well be. I have no idea. I've never looked into it since my initial looks, probably back 20 plus years ago. Wayback Machine is amazing, but it's disturbing how many sites in my space haven't changed in 20 years. Yeah, that is quite a worrying kind of thing. But we know this kind of thing happens. Some people have websites, like we said earlier on, and they have no intention of changing things in there because it's just an afterthought. Unfortunately, those are the kind of people that will always have that afterthought thing, and the website is no real main requirement for their business. So, but if you've never looked at the Wayback Machine, honestly, go over there, take a look at some of your favorite sites or some of the sites that you've worked on, and just have a little look. It's actually quite fun. You could waste a day just looking at that. Lycos and Angel Fire. Oh god, now we're pulling things out of the woodwork now. I think we're really looking at some bad things. We won't talk about those. Eric. Now this is a completely different thing. Your best choice for monetizing a blog website with less than 1,000 visitors a month. Right, we'll answer this question. I just want my bumper back up now because I want to put it on there. How cool is that? I'm sorry. Monetizing a blog for 1,000 visitors or less a month. First of all, I would recommend going and take a look at, what's the name of the thing? I can't think of the name of the channel on YouTube. But it's an American channel, and it's, do a search for Project 24. I can't on YouTube, because I can't think of the name of the channel. It's Income something. Have a look at that, because they'll give you a lot of ideas. They do a lot of things to do with Project 24 is basically helping you with a blog, monetize it, and make decent revenue. How to get better traffic, make more money. All depends on the niche that your blog is in. But I would say generally, if you're in a niche that actually has products related to it, so it could be a tech niche, it could be dogs, it could be pets, it could be anything. If you've got products that you could create content around, and there are affiliate partnership schemes, not just Amazon, because Amazon kind of cut massively back on their percentages. Look for actual companies that might offer affiliate schemes for specific items or range of items. Take a look at creating content around those and use those to be your revenue stream. Because I think affiliate related content has the potential to make you a lot more money than any kind of ad side of things, and you need to get a lot more traffic before ads becomes a viable way of making money. So I would say that would be the best way of going about it to start off with. And also, if you have the opportunity to create some kind of video content to embed into the blog items, the articles, or to support them, then I would do that as well, because video is definitely the way to go about doing these kinds of things. More traffic, more people want to watch videos, because you can watch something that's 2 or 3 minutes long, or you could read something that's 10 pages long. Most people are going to go for the watching a video. So Eric, I hope that helps a little bit. I'm not really a blogger, so I can't really give you huge amounts of advice on that, because it's not the niche that I'm kind of in. But that's what I would take a look at doing, is taking a look, like I say, do a search for Project 24 on YouTube. That'll kind of lead you in the right direction for the channel, and then you can take a look, because they're going to give you tons more information that'll help you much more than I can. Carl, Steve, the animated GIFs, yeah. Can anyone remember the animated GIFs of the American post box where the flap would drop to the front and the email would go in there, the mail would go in there? Oh, that brings back so many memories. Okay, let's just jump to the end of these comments and let's have a little look. We're going to do a couple more comments, and I think then what we'll do is we'll call it the evening, because, as always, time has gone by much quicker than I anticipated. Income School. Thank you very much, Carl. I knew it was income something. I just couldn't think what it was. Yeah, so take a look at Income School. Right. What else do we have? Yeah, Eric. So hopefully that will help you out. Carl, like I said, Carl said, it's the Income School. So check out the Income School. That should give you a lot of really good information. AOL. Oof. Yeah. Okay, let's go to this one. Elementor's trying to clean up the bloat. I wish they had a lifetime like Oxygen. I don't wish they had a lifetime, and I'll tell you why. Lifetime deals are only good for the person that purchased the lifetime deal. The problem is, if you do lifetime deals, at some point you are going to run out of money. And when you run out of money, you can't develop your product anymore, you can't support the product anymore, and all those kinds of things. So your product will fail. So as much as we all like to get a good deal, we all like to save money, and lifetime deals, you know, to run, and I mean, I'm not talking like running a short lifetime deal, but to run the lifetime deal model as the only purchase model that you offer, I think you're really asking for trouble long term, unless you have a product that is so niche but has such a massive market and no one can compete with you. I just think that that's a short term approach that will come back to bite you on the butt before you know it. You need money. Every business, no matter what kind of business it is, needs money. That's the lifeblood of a business. And when you have a lifetime deal that's quite low in cost, you can't sustain a business model on that. You really can't. Let me just give you an example. Let's just say you set up a web design company and you say to all your clients, I'll build your website and you will have free hosting forever. That's great. The clients will be like, woohoo, love it. But your cost for that hosting doesn't subside. You still have to pay. So now in first year, you have 10 clients. And the cost for your hosting, let's just say it's going to cost you £10, $10 a month. You could absorb that because you get one new client in every single month, and then you're in profit. Now you've got 1,000 clients on there, and suddenly your outgoings are $1,000 or pounds a month, and you're getting one new client in, and you're charging them £1,000 or dollars. Suddenly, you're only just on a flat break even. Forget any expenses you might have on top of that: computers, IT software, electric, heating, wages. You can't sustain that. It's just not viable to sustain it. So I think the lifetime model is probably a really, really bad thing to do. Not for me. So I would much prefer Elementor or anyone like that to continue with the you pay every single year for this product that you want to use. Simple as that. Okay, Carl, I'm not sure what you're going to show me on there. I don't know if I can actually even pull this up. Unfortunately, I can't. Okay, so hopefully that kind of answers why I think lifetime deals are not a good thing and why I'd rather not do it. Okay. So a little look. Lyle, what do we have? I agree with that statement, but to get people in the door, that's a good thing. After some period of time, starting a smaller. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with running a short-term lifetime deal. You know, the video I put out last Friday was all about lifetime deals and how you can benefit and build a business from a lifetime deal-based setup. But if you've got ongoing costs, which both businesses are going to have, any business is online, any business that has development costs, they're going to have ongoing costs. So to get people onto your platform and start spreading the word, yes, it's a viable way of doing that. You even look at things like AppSumo and the other platforms like SaaS Mantra and other ones. It's all about getting some people, early adopters, on board to spread the word and become evangelical, or whatever the term is, about that product and start selling for you. They become advocates for your product. But if your business model is always to have the lifetime deal, it's only so far that can take you before you do have problems. I mean, Divi's a good example. And one of the biggest things is they run a constant lifetime deal. You can pay annually or you can pay the lifetime deal. I believe, anyway, I'm pretty sure that's still the model they've got. I just don't see that as being something that could be sustained long term. Because you think about it. If you follow a link of mine, for example, and I don't quote me 100% on this, but I believe the affiliate cut of Divi is 50%. So if a lifetime deal of Divi is $300 and you go through my link, that's already 50%, $150 of that is gone. So that's $150 worth of profit. And that's fine year one. But then year two, there's no renewal costs, but that customer could still be asking for help and technical support and dealing with updates and all those kinds of things. That doesn't become viable long term. So I think as a short term goal, lifetime deals are fine. As a short term, getting your foot in the door, lifetime deals are fine. As a long term business model that constantly runs lifetime deals, I would question the long term effectiveness or the long term lifespan of that theme, plugin, software, whatever it is. So just be careful. Just when you go into these, just know that if their business model is solely structured around a lifetime deal platform, at some point they're going to run out of money. They really are. They can't. There's only so many people you can get to come in through the door and give you money before you run out of new people. Okay. Oh, Carl, I don't doubt it's not safe to show. It's just for some reason I can't actually click and open it up inside this particular section. Let me just have a look if I can open it up on the live stream and take a look on there. Oh yeah, the animated GIFs. Let me just quickly pop you over and show you what Carl has shared with us. Oh, the animated GIF, the mailbox GIF. So many of those, and so many websites had those, along with how many visitors you'd had to your site in any given day. Can you remember those? The little counter at the bottom. This site has been visited by 103 people in the last 7 years. Says a lot. Okay, GIF heaven. What about making a product have lifetime updates but an annual cost for support? That would be a business model that could potentially succeed. Because however you kind of brand that up, whether you sort of say like you're paying for support with the product is a lifetime, then you're still getting residual income. And that's kind of what we're talking about more, a case of having that residual income than how you package it. So that kind of thing, I think, is definitely a positive way to go, because you could then get people through the door with the lifetime incentive. But then if they want that technical support, then they have to pay for it. This kind of goes back to the business model we talked about earlier in the video about Elementor with the free users, where they got the Elementor free. Instead of supporting those, maybe they need to take a look at making that the support is something they pay for. And that way they can focus their support efforts on the people that pay for it, i.e. based upon buying support slots, tickets, whatever you want to call it, and the people that pay for the lifetime subscription, pay for the annual subscription to Elementor Pro. Either way, they make money to create a better support system and better development cycle. So that's what I would say. So yeah, main design, I would say, yeah, that's definitely an opportunity, an option. But whatever method they choose, it would just be good to have some way of making sure they have residual income coming into their business to help them sustain and grow as a business. Because the last thing you want is a business that just creates a product, sells it for a lifetime deal, and then they have no more money to be able to support it or develop it. That just becomes a dead product very, very soon. Pascal, thank you very much, sir. Have a good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is where you are, and stay safe. Okay, we'll do one more, and then we're going to call it a night. And I keep saying that, and then 3 hours later, we're still talking. 100% that gives customers the option to either save money or have a helping hand when needed beyond the very basic of initial setup, etc. Exactly. but you are still having the options to put money back into the business, and that is the key factor. You have to have money in a business to make it sustainable. You can't constantly be looking for new clients, new investors. They're going to dry up at some point. So it's just a natural way of business. Chris, do I have any recommendations for a YouTube channel that teaches video creation and editing? Good question. I don't so much as have a channel that's sort of like I would recommend. I would just say, depends what platform you're going to use. If you're a Mac user, you've got Final Cut Pro, whatever it is, 10X, whatever it is. Or you've got DaVinci, or you've got Premiere. Obviously, you've got some other ones like Sony Vegas and different things like that. But personally, I would say you're better off learning one of the sort of the big three, as it were. I don't know what to talk about there. So what I would suggest is looking for a video that sort of covers the basics, and then when you are ready to take a look at... Sorry. Can everybody actually hear me okay? Because I've got a couple of comments inside here and saying about sound and things. So let me know if you can hear me. So what I want to sort of say is... Thanks, Lyle. Awesome. Find something that gives you a starting point to understand the basics of the tool that you're using. And once you're kind of used to working with any of these what are called NLEs or non-linear editors, you'll see that they're very similar. They just have their little quirks. So whether you use, sort of Final Cut, or you use DaVinci Resolve, or you use Premiere, once you understand the fundamentals, you can use any of those three. Get the basics in there, and once you've done that, then take a look at some of the more intermediate, speeding up your editing and so on. But as it is, I don't really know a particular channel that I would sort of recommend taking a look at. I would just say get yourself used to working with the key editing tools, and then just look at YouTube channels, look at films, look at different things and see, what do I like about the way this is edited? What's interesting about it? How do people keep my attention? What kind of cuts are there? What are the little tricks and the nuances that are used? Take a look at Make Art Now on YouTube. Take a look at, obviously, Peter McKinnon, Matti Hapoya. All these kind of names, they're sort of like some of the top ones. I would say Make Art Now is quite cool because he kind of looks at it from a making videos from a aesthetic point of view, and not necessarily from a physical hands-on clicking keys, moving mouse buttons and so on. So I would say that gives you a kind of open opportunity to see how things are done. If you want a technical aspect of tools and software and hardware and things, take a look at Gerald Undone on YouTube, because he's a very technical kind of guy and really, really good at showing you how to get good results, how to deal with color, how to deal with those advanced kinds of things that you need to know when you're working with video editing. So that's what I would suggest taking a look at. Whatever platform you choose, just do a look on YouTube for some basic starter courses, basic starter lessons. Get yourself accustomed to it, the basic tools, editing, importing media, managing things, and then take a look at how to do some of the more advanced things and get some inspiration from people that are just good editors. Andrew, been looking at Resolve, but made much process too lazy. Well, come on, it's Christmas time. You've got plenty of time on your hands. Resolve is great. Resolve is a really good platform. But you need to... it can be kind of overwhelming if you're not used to NLEs, non-linear editors. And you just kind of have to get used to working with the way they work and then customize them to the way that you want to work. And that's the nice thing with all of these different sort of main three NLEs, is you can customize them to do pretty much whatever you want. So if you get used to working with DaVinci Resolve and then you want to move over to Premiere, you could simply just create all the same keyboard shortcuts in Premiere and get it to work in a very similar fashion. So that's what I would look at. Okay, Steve Pro, thank you very much. Say hello to the wife for me, and yeah, safe journeys. YouTube reference, Gerald Dundon or Gerald Undone. Okay, right then. So Let's have a look. I would like to do some Adobe After Effects, but too lazy and tight to spend money. Look, I can tell you now, After Effects is a beast of a tool. Not just for the fact that it's not the easiest thing in the world to learn. You will get used to it. But you want one heck of a computer to run that with any kind of semblance of quality. Take my word for it. It's an amazing platform, but it's not the easiest to get your head around by any stretch. Thank you very much, Chris, for the super chat. And no problem at all. Always enjoy helping you good people out. And I just enjoy these live chats. It's just good fun to get together and just have a little chat. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up there. I think we've kind of covered most of what I wanted to talk about tonight. We've answered a bunch of questions, and hopefully you found this a little bit useful. Hopefully it's given you some insights into my thoughts on Elementor, my thoughts on what's happening with WordPress 5.6, some of the things to take into consideration before you look at updating, all those kinds of useful things. But what I want to say is thank you very much for joining me tonight. It's been absolutely awesome to take the time out of your day, your evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Stay safe. We will be back online next Thursday at the same time, 6 p.m. GMT. We'll be having another lockdown live and talking about more things techie, geeky, and WordPressy. But for now, thank you very much for joining me, and take care.